Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first recorded episode of Healers of the World. This podcast has been birthed from such a deep passion for integral eldership and leadership in our industry, as well as such deep frustration for often watching the lack of integrity that exists in the industry. And so I decided to take all of this energy and put it to something useful, which is what I hold the intention of this podcast for. So I am on a mission to find healers of the world that are working in alignment with the lineage and the tradition from which their medicine comes from. And I want to share their stories of awakening and becoming, and to explore how their modalities are serving the communities around them. The souls that I have invited onto this podcast are all deeply rooted into the organic whole. They are grounded in the earth, and their ears and their hearts are wide open to the whispers of the unseen world, to the unseen forces. And so I'm also so curious to sit with each of these healers and ask them about how they are interpreting these remarkable times that we find ourselves in. Today we are sitting with Vanessa Lightbody, and you will find all of her details in the text. Vanessa is an Akashic reader and a healer. And when I sit in session with Vanessa, I feel that sense of eldership, which I have been looking for in our industry. I feel this deep sense of respect that emanates from Vanessa for the lineages in which she works and the sacred web of life of which we are all part of. She just oozes humility, guys, and her work is intentional, and it really stood out for me because of how grounded it feels. You know, these days as healers, so many of us are in such a rush to give ourselves all the titles and to sell work that we have not been fully initiated into. And this is the stark contrast that I feel when I sit with Vanessa. So Vanessa, welcome today. I am so honored to have you on this podcast. And I know that my listeners are going to leave so enriched by whatever is shared in our time today.
Thank you, Robyn. It's so good to be here and to share this space with you. I'm looking forward to our conversation too.
Beautiful. So let's dive right in. Just to ground this conversation by way of an introduction, I would love to hear about a little bit more about you and your story of becoming. So how you came into your medicine and your journey of awakening so far. And if you feel to share about the lineage in which you work, that would be beautiful to hear about as well.
Yeah, beautiful. So setting that grounding tone and just acknowledging the lands that I'm speaking to you from, of the Ais people in Turtle Island, where I find myself right now in their waters. I'm very close to the ocean. So rooting that in as a large part of the medicine that I carry and that I walk with comes from the waters. So acknowledging their presence here now. And in terms of my ancestry, acknowledging my mother's line and my father's line, I am East African and Australian and Scottish, Kenyan from the Kikuyu people and the Swahili people, and also from the Aboriginal indigenous people of Australia. So this is the lineage in which I find myself in. In terms of my awakening experience, I would say that I was always a deeply intuitive child. So a lot of how I understood the spirit world came to me at a very young age through dream time. So through my dreaming, as I do come from a dreaming lineage, and I understand the world itself through dream time. So when I was very young, I would have precognitive or prophetic dreams. and I would share with my parents what I was dreaming about. A lot of my predictions were not welcomed. And I think that they were deeply unnerving for my parents as well.
Mm.
And I responded to that because I didn't feel that I was being celebrated in what I was delivering. And I felt that it was important because it was for the well being of the family. And what I actually found is what happened in my family unit is that my dreams only became something that were welcomed when the family was perhaps in danger. Something bad was on its way, or something bad was going to happen, or there was suspicion of somebody that they were in connection with. And then my mom would come to me and say, "What do you think of this person? What do you think their real motivations are?" Um, so this taught me a lot about my connection to spirit and how it would be most useful or most valuable if it was something that could help my family survive. And I think that this has really characterized my relationship with the spiritual world as well, as my ancestors, even today, will show me something in advance so that I don't need to experience that, so that I can actually change direction and reroute. So I was a highly intuitive child. I would say that in terms of my mother's line, it's a very strong connection to spirit. So my sister is very highly intuitive, and so is my mother, but there was more of an outright rejection of those gifts. I mean, it kind of fell on my shoulders to carry that for the family. As I grew up, at the age of 15, I went through what is known as an ancestral calling. And this is something that's grounded in a number of indigenous cultures. In the West, we would understand this as a shamanic calling because normally the person becomes ill. It's a type of spirit illness. And what that means is that you may go to a doctor, a Western doctor, and there's nothing technically wrong with you. But you're having an experience that may look like actually being ill, but when they run tests, there's not showing that there's something happening in your body. There's no disease present in your body. Or it can be really based in the psychology of the person. So for me, it was psycho-spiritual in its entirety. I did not have a lot of physical issues that accompanied that, with the exception of debilitating headaches. And what happened is I essentially, at this age, something catalyzed in me and woke up in me, and I couldn't bring it back to sleep. There's nothing that I could do to stop what was happening. And I could hear spirits, I could see spirits, I could feel them, and I was unable to rest because I was completely overwhelmed with information from the spirit world. And it was terrifying for me. It was very scary for my family too. And it reached a point that I needed intervention. I needed divine intervention, or they didn't know what was going to happen to me, right? In the West, this would also be seen as essentially I lost my mind. I went crazy because this understanding of being connected to the spirit world in this deep way is not recognized in the West. It's not understood, and it's largely been neglected, right? And I'm very fortunate that I was being raised in South Africa. I grew up in South Africa because I feel that if this had happened to me in any other part of the world, if I was, let's say, if I was in Australia, I think my story would have been very different, right? I think I likely would have been put on medication. So, um, a stranger was found, or a stranger appeared in the right timing, as led by spirit. And this person was able to speak to me about what I was going through and confirm the messages that I was receiving. And he essentially just told me, "You're a very gifted individual, and there's nothing that's wrong with you, and you just need help." And I was like, okay, yes, because I don't know what to do, and I can't rest because I feel tormented by this world that I'm experiencing. And I went to a spiritual retreat. So at 15, which is actually the traditional age that one would be initiated, I went through a rite of passage. I went to a spiritual retreat. I got to sit with a large group of people, and I learned about meditation. I learned about mediumship. I learned about the energy system. I learned about purification protocol, all of it. And that really, really helped me. So after that retreat, I came back and I understood I'm having this experience. Other people may not be having an experience like this. They may not understand, but there are people that understand, and there's nothing pathologically wrong with me for having this experience. But I was still a young person. I was still in high school. I was trying to navigate what I was going through. But now I had tools. Now I could meditate. Now I knew how to clear the home. Now I knew what to do if intranquil spirits or departed spirits were coming to me with messages, because that's essentially what would happen. And I knew how to engage. And then later on, in my early 20s, I started to do a lot of prayer work. And I was doing a lot of prayer work because I understood that there was something within my family that was being hidden from me, that had harmed me. And I wanted for me to understand what this was and to essentially bring it up to the surface of my consciousness. So I was doing active prayer work. Every day I would pray. I would wake up and I would ask my ancestors to reveal to me what was happening, because this was also accompanying a number of upsetting dreams. And I was trying to make sense of the dreams. And I was trying to, because they were flashbacks. But I didn't have the whole picture. So I would just go to pray. And what happened then is that I had another huge spiritual crisis, and what I would describe as ontological shock, because the ontology just speaks about the nature of reality. And the information that was revealed to me about my family was so shocking to me on a self-concept level that it brought about a spiritual crisis when it was revealed to me. And I was so distressed about what I learned that I left my family's home. And then it would be less than a year, I would leave South Africa as well. So everything happened really fast in that way. And then I really started to commit to my spiritual studies and understood my role in the family. My great grandmother, my mother's side, was a medicine woman, and she was ostracized in the family as well. And there had been a curse that was placed over the family because she didn't approve of the marriage that happened. And this curse, I saw it play through the family, and I was tasked with the responsibility, essentially, of clearing this curse in my family. and I was doing the Akashic work at that time, I saw my Akashic records in my dream. So that was the first engagement with them. And then it followed into the physical world, and I started doing training. And I had received in my Akashic records everything that my great grandmother had put on the family in terms of the curse. I also had consultation with an elder, Sangoma, who confirmed what I was receiving. And I was able to go ahead and clear the curse.
Mm.
So I like to say I was called by a curse.
Yes, yeah. I mean, what an initiation, because you know, how do you back away from something like that? I mean, as you said, you couldn't turn off the gift when it started when you were 15, but you know, a calling that is
Mhm.
so close to home, and the responsibility of the wellness of your family. Yeah. And you know, what comes to my mind, and you know, that's a whole other podcast potentially, but you know, it really makes me wonder about like, um, yeah, this concept of right and wrong, or you know, the very first visitation I had of the goddess, the very first full-bodied
Mm.
experience was around how the yin and the yang is actually one, the light and the dark is one, and how I needed to stop looking at reality in terms of such a dual lens. If I was going to work with her and really understand her teachings, I needed to understand that she had birthed everything. And you know, that's just what comes to mind when
Yes.
I hear the story, because you know, here is this curse which you know is not of the light, um and yet
Mm.
it brought you to
Mhm.
serve and to hold this medicine. So that's really beautiful. And yeah, Vanessa,
Mhm.
just a lot of respect, because that's two spiritual emergencies, major spiritual
Yes.
emergencies in your life. So very in-depth training. Yeah. So thank you
Mm.
for sharing that. So I'm so curious, because having sat with you, you know, with the Akashic records, I've got a few questions
Yes.
about that. But before we dive into
Mm.
that, how would you just explain to any of our listeners how your understanding of the Akash and what it is that you are working with?
Yes. Yes. I love this question because I feel that within the New Age spirituality, there has been an extraction of the Akash and a removal from the tradition in which it arises from, right? So the Akash is a Sanskrit word. It means ether or space, and it's grounded in Vedic philosophy. Essentially, there are 5 elements. So we have fire, water, earth, air, and then we have space. And space or ether, this is the primary element that we're working with when we're within the Akash, and it relates to consciousness itself. That is what ether is. Sound is the primary form of communication within the Akash. So the Akash is a type of sound knowledge. What does that mean? It means that it's a part of an oral tradition, and it's how we understand ourselves and the world through sound, through vibration, through frequencies, through sound waves. It's understood that sound is the language of the divine. So when we're within the Akash, our primary mode of perception is listening, deep listening. So when you're having an Akashic record reading, it's actually a sonic divination, because in front of me there are no cards, there are no bones, there are no shells. There is the ether, that is the element that comprises of the Akash. And because it's an oral tradition, it lives in the mouth. It lives in what has been spoken, what has been sung. You can think of this as the great song of creation. This is why our record keepers are called record keepers, which really means that they are memory keepers. So
Mm.
in Africa, there's a teaching that when an elder dies, and an elder is not somebody who is a certain age group, but an elder is somebody who is a repository of spiritual knowledge and spiritual wisdom. And when an elder dies, it's akin to an entire library burning down. So we can think of our record keepers or our memory keepers are these elders of spiritual knowledge and a spiritual wisdom that they have accumulated through many, many lifetimes and various dimensions, planes, and realities. This is the Akash.
Mm. I love the way that you have described that. I believe it really grounds us when we understand the origin of the medicine that is being shared with us or medicine that we are sharing with
Mhm.
others. It's so important to honoring that whole web. And I feel that it creates so much wholeness in the medicine being shared. I'm assuming then, based on what you said, that this is the black time that you speak to on your website. The
Yes.
time with no start and no end.
Yes, exactly. So within my lineage, as I believe that there are many indigenous cultures who have their own understanding of the Akash, right? So within my lineage, the black time is known as Zamani. And Zamani is a trans-temporal river. So that means that it transcends time itself. It carries all of creation, and it's said to go right back to the very beginning of time. It's mythic time.
Mm, mm,
It remembers the very beginning. So it's said that the future does not exist ahead of us, and the future is not new, but that we walk backwards into the future. The future is ancient, the future is ancestral, and this is Zamani.
oh, that's beautiful. I really feel that. Yeah. Yeah, so what I'm understanding too then is through this frequency, through this sonic divination, it's a portal that one moves into. I think I've had 3 or 4 readings with you now, and every one of them, I feel like I'm sitting with a council of grandmothers. The information that comes through feels so grounded in terms of not always what I want to hear and not always in giving me the answers. Like I feel like it's the kind of information that would come through if I sat with a council of grandmothers. And it's one of the things that I've so
Mm.
appreciated about our sessions. And one of the things that I noticed is that for each session, my records have been in a different place. And can you speak to why that is so?
Absolutely. So I feel that what can help in understanding the records moving into different frequencies or alternative frequencies of consciousness, right, is that we are an instrument. Every single one of us is an instrument. And what is available to us changes at each moment of time depending on our attunement to the song that we have within us, the song that we were born with, the drumming that is in our heart. That is in constant flux. And right
Mm,
now on the planet, there's a lot that is being changed within the heartbeat of Mother Earth herself. And we are being asked to synchronize our heartbeat with her heartbeat so that we can receive the directions of this transformational process that she's undergoing. So this is why it can change. Another reason why the information is fluctuating is that there is so much information within the Akashic records, which are really Akashic recordings, right? They are ongoing. It's not static or fixed or immutable. They're alive. So I think a really great way of understanding it is that we can, for example, go outside and sit down and we can feel the breeze that's coming in, and it's carrying information. It's carrying stories to us from all around the planet, and it's never the same. It's never the same.
Mm. Mm. That's so beautiful. And the image that I'm being shown is it's two instruments coming together. It's the frequency of this string being struck at that moment, connecting with the frequency of the records or the black time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and there are octaves that give us too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that for those that are listening, that really speaks to the sacredness of this encounter and the importance of preparing oneself for that session, so that the note that we are going to strike in that session, the frequency is as high as we have the potential to do in that day or in that moment, and honoring the sacredness of that way. So, guardians, the record keepers that we make contact with in these sessions, are these record keepers personal to us, or are they like collective record keepers?
They are personal and they are transpersonal, right? So just as we have ancestors who are personal ancestors, meaning that they come from our mother's line and our father's line, we also have transpersonal ancestors that are mountains, that are rivers, that are forests, that will assist us. So it's the same with the record keepers, right? Everybody will be able to have connection to personal record keepers that are holding information, storing the oral history of the family and of the soul's path, past, present, and future. But there will also be transpersonal record keepers who, let's say, are responsible and who have been ordained to safeguard the sacred oral literature of the planet itself.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, the image that's coming to mind is that it's just taking it one step further, of the frequency of this chord touching the frequency of that river of spirit. That in that moment a constellation is formed, and that constellation also dictates the bridge keeper, the one that's bringing the information through the face of that guide at the moment. Yeah.
Yes, yes. That's a beautiful image.
So, Vanessa, do just in your experience now with this work, are there any dangers in working with the Akash, or sort of any challenges with the Akash?
Yes, I would say that in general, doing any form of medicine work can be dangerous. It can be dangerous primarily because in our society today, a lot of people are left feeling alone as they navigate the spiritual world. And they don't have elders to fall back on, because in the West, we have largely lost our elders, right? We may have people who reach a certain age, but they are not considered elders. And this is likely because they have not had the opportunity to go through an initiation process. So it's understood within a lot of indigenous cultures that the West is an uninitiated culture. It's a young culture. And it's stuck developmentally at the psycho-spiritual level of adolescence. This is the issue, trying to break through the adolescence, even into spiritual adulthood. So eldership is even rarer for those of us in Western societies. So there are dangers engaging with the spirit world and medicine practice in isolation. It's important to have resources people that we trust, that we can rely on, friends, family, connection to ourself, our body, so that we can be integral in caretaking ourselves, right? And what I find in the new age, or what's really popularized, and I know you were touching on it a little bit when you were speaking about the pill effect, um, that there can be an encouragement to go hard and to go fast, and that comes from the lack of initiation. People are looking to initiate themselves, right? And what can happen is that we can end up in a trap of constantly trying to initiate ourselves because we don't have the integrity that's set up, which really comes from witnessing. So, a large part of initiation is not only being able to go into the spiritual world, undergo a rite of passage, and be changed. People can do that. But what I think becomes missing in a lot of people who self initiate because they understand this is something that I need, this is something that the earth needs, is that they come back into their community or they come back into their families and they're not recognized as changed. They're not recognized as having undergone an initiation process. They're not celebrated for having done that. So that lack of witnessing, which is so important in the spiritual process, I think again is what makes somebody go right back to the beginning and says, well, I guess I have to go through another really intense initiation experience because I'm still not being recognized in my medicine and in the value that I carry and what I'm offering to the earth and to my community. Yeah, so it is dangerous. It is dangerous,
Yeah.
and I do believe that it's the same with the Akashic frequencies. Um, what I enjoy about the Akashic frequencies is that the record keepers really do not provide information that somebody is not ready to hear, right? And I think that this is beneficial because we can absolutely be exposed to information that we're not ready for, and that information then becomes more harmful than it is helpful to us in our journey because we do not have the tools or the capacity to process what's being revealed to us. For me, I'm consistently astounded at how much record keepers will provide to one person and how little they'll provide to another person.
Mm. 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 Well, that was actually one of my questions. That you've answered the question. In terms of what I wanted to gain was, have you ever opened the records and no information comes through because of the fact that there is an incongruency? But I feel that you've really spoken now.
I have, but there's always still information. So, like, my larger role is yes, I'm a diviner, and a diviner in an indigenous African perspective is that you can't go to. So, like, what's very popular now is somebody can go to a channeler or, let's say, to a tarot reader, and they'll receive information about what's happening to them. That's beautiful. But they will not receive what to do to alleviate perhaps what's balance or any kind of spiritual illness, right? So a traditional diviner will always provide you with solutions or remedies. That's really what it's called. How can we remedy what's out of balance here? What needs to be tended to? And my primary expertise is that I remove spiritual illness. So people will come to me for sonic divination and Akashic record reading, but actually they don't know that they're signing up. Their higher self knows that they're signing up to do spiritual healing, a removal of an illness that may have started them in this life. It may have started 6 months ago. It may have started in childhood, or it may have started hundreds of years ago in the long body, the transgenerational body, the ancestral body. So that's primarily what I do. So when somebody comes to me, they aren't able to receive a lot of divine guidance within the Akashic records. There's not capacity within the field. I can see why there's not capacity within the field. And then what actually happens is a healing protocol takes place.
Beautiful. So there's actually so many questions that are coming from that. But firstly, just so that we are really clear, this is also for everyone listening. How would you explain spiritual illness versus like another form of illness?
Okay. So everything that exists in this physical world comes from the spirit world. It cannot be here if it did not come from the spirit world. So that's number one. What that means when we're trying to differentiate between, let's say, a mundane crisis healing issue or a spiritual healing issue is that we can't actually separate them. They're intertwined. The degree to which something will be spiritually influenced will vary based on the condition at hand, but it will always have some level of contact with the spirit world and with illnesses that have come from the spirit world. This is why in every single mystic tradition, indigenous culture, even religious traditions, they emphasize purification, purification of self.
I'm so glad I asked that. It seems obvious, but I think it's so important for us to always understand, because again, it's taking us back to that root. And with this idea of the root of everything being in spirit, because it has to be, because we
Yes,
are spirit beings, the importance of the
yes,
purification. So, Vanessa,
yes,
you said so much there that just in terms of the West being an uninitiated society, that I have a full body yes to. So much of my work that I do with my clients and, in the book that I've written is around soul initiations and how the
mm,
degree to which soul initiations are unrecognized in Western society, where we don't understand the difference between a spiritual depression or a spiritual crisis versus something that now needs help in the mundane. And then we only treat it from the mundane. And so many people are not actually fulfilling that degree of soul incarnation that's trying to happen because of that. And what I loved so much about what you spoke about was the witnessing, because I think of my own experience with initiations I've been through. When I first heard that, I actually heard it a little bit differently to what you meant. And I wanted to share that, but it's all the same, which is also witnessing ourselves and the ability to be embodied. Because quite a few years back, I did a lot of study of the magical Kabbalah. And one of the concepts that really stood with me was this idea that we can gain power, but if we don't walk up the middle pillar, our power becomes very unbalanced. And the more that teaching has had time to settle in my own body, the more I've understood that the middle pillar is the body, and that when we are not
yes,
embodied and in our body, our
mhm,
power becomes very unbalanced. And so and we see
mhm,
this, we see many people with amazing spiritual gifts, but who are actually very unbalanced in their power. And so I believe that that it comes from an inability to witness oneself, to know when something is out of alignment because we're not fully connected to our body, which also speaks to this need to slow down.
yes,
And then,
mhm,
because I hadn't considered it from the perspective that you were speaking to, just in terms of our initiations being witnessed, I mean, that's something that I really feel into, having gone through such deep initiation myself. And
yes,
um, without the eldership in my community, having to really, really witness myself, because I can't depend on
mm,
anyone else doing it around me. So I just feel that
mm,
that really provides such value, and such contemplation for all the seekers that are listening to this. So thank you for sharing that. Um,
yeah,
so now, in terms of this healing that you do, with the example that you gave of someone who needed a lot of spiritual healing, who came for a reading, for instance, and not a lot of information came through. Can you talk to us about the Earthlight medicine that you offer and what that is,
Yeah,
and where that's come from?
beautiful. So, Earthlight medicine has come directly from the earth itself, and I've received instructions from my ancestors through dream time on Earthlight. So I always go back to dream time because in dream time, this is where we receive the original instructions. And you'll actually see that there's a through line, again, in a lot of mystic traditions that speak about dreaming and how the dream world is actually the real world. And this is the world in which we are asleep, right? So every time we go to dream, we fly and we journey in spirit. So Earthlight medicine is related to the heartbeat of Mother Earth. I received the attunement of Earthlight when I was living in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I was living on a fault line. And there are a lot of fault lines in New Zealand. And every day I could feel the movement, the tremor of this fault line every day. And I started to sit with the fault line and I started to listen and respond to the tremor. And actually, how that manifested on a somatic level is that I started to shake in response. And this is how the attunement started to happen. In my mother's line, as a Kikuyu person, we are said to belong to Mount Kirinyaga, Mount Kenya. So a lot of indigenous people will understand who we are, our concept of selfhood, based off our relationship to the land. It's not that we own the land, but that the land is a part of us. And Mount Kirinyaga is actually a volcano. And it's said that it came from the stars and it crashed into Earth. And then it spewed out all of this lava, it gave its fire, and then it became a mountain. But it's not really a mountain, it's a volcano. So I understand that a part of my mother's line in terms of our creation story, where the creator is said to reside, is in Mount Kirinyaga, which is the volcano. So I'm connected to the volcano. So actually being able to live on a fault line and be connected to the spirits of the fault line in this way was very moving to me. So I see that Earthlight is here as a contribution to the reincarnation cycle that Mother Earth is going through. And it is also a return of what would be called an ugu, which is a divine gift in the ancestry that has come back into manifestation within my life that I can now offer. You can also understand it as something where you're lying down and you're receiving the transmission of Earthlight, which is helping you to attune yourself to your magnetic sense. So in my father's line, in my Aboriginal heritage, we have the understanding of the song lines. And of course, these song lines are places in the earth of high electromagnetic frequency. They are the veins of Mother Earth. So when we're working with Earthlight, we are also attuning ourselves to the song lines that are around us, to the information that is traveling through these song lines. And we are going to the earth and we are asking her to revive our magnetic ability. Every single species on this planet has the ability to listen and to navigate this planet through listening to the song of the earth. Us as humans, we've lost that ability, but it's still within us. And what my ancestors have shown me is that it will be essential in the coming years that we have this ability revitalized so that we know where to go, where we are being led, when to leave, so that we're exactly where we need to be at the right moment that we need to be. So we have to start to take back some of our agency away from the reliance on GPS and understand how we find in our body to go to the earth, receive her direction.
That's so beautiful. I think it was, what is the author who first introduced me to the concept of the earth being a living library? But something that I myself have discovered since moving to live on the land as closely as I do 4 years ago, we now actually live in quite a isolated area on a farm. So I left the city about 4 years ago, is that there is so much codex in nature. And the way that we connect with that codex is through alignment. It's through listening. So the more we attune ourselves to the biorhythms of our body, and we are in the right time, at the right place, the codex in the rising sun, the codex in the falling rain, the codex in that symphony of birdsong at that moment. There is so much information there. But the key to unlock it is the ability to be in alignment, which comes from listening. And while I was listening to you, my mind was wandering and I was thinking, I'm sure that a lot of our listeners like me who don't know a lot about their heritage, it's confusing because the more and more we do this work, there often feels like there is a big ancestral hole. And, I was listening to you and thinking, I wonder if there are going to be readers listening and in awe of the way that you speak and wondering how they can find more of that tradition in their lives. And I'm going to speak to that in case there's anyone thinking that, and please chime in, is that we are all ancestors of the earth. And so no matter how much knowledge we have of our kin or don't have of our kin, or no matter how rooted we feel in our communities or don't feel in our communities, we are all of the earth.
Yeah.
The earth is all of our ancestors. And we find the answers and the information there.
Yes. I think that it can be taboo and it can be really troublesome for people who are saying, I'm going to do healing work. I'm going to contribute to the earth. I'm going to choose this for my descendants. This is what I believe in. I understand that this is important. This is something that was lost. I prioritize it. I recognize it as sacred. And then there's this gap of, but the ancestors before were in an extractive and exploitative relationship with the land of place. And the work becomes to offer repair and reconciliation to the land by going to the land. And there are specific offering and ritual work that can be done for reconciliation. Normally, this kind of work is done through water. So there's an African teaching that says water no get enemy, which means water has no enemy. All waters touch water everywhere. So water becomes the particular spirit that comes forward and says, I will be the one that you can approach to do this reconciliation work. It helps all of us. And I also think it's really essential for us to understand, no matter how long our ancestors have been removed from the land, even if it was hundreds of years ago, we did have ancestors that were connected to the land in a reciprocal way and in a loving way. We all did. We all did, because we're a custodial species. So even right now, this change that's happening on the planet, I really see that this is a rite of passage for us as human beings to remember that we are a custodial species. We have responsibility here, right? And as you know, white people can look to indigenous people for guidance, but largely they're going to start to need to do the work in their own communities towards repair and towards reconciliation. There's a teaching that says that we have all been given at least one ancestor that we can work with.
Yeah, this is so beautiful. The key word here feels like repair. And, even the way that
Yeah.
you described the black time or the Zamani, you describe this
Mm.
idea of us moving backwards through time at one stage in our discussion. Um, that really speaks to me about this time, and it moves in so beautifully to our next question, because and I feel this so deeply in my own spiritual work, that this time right now, because of the moment that we are in the earth's journey, is about repair. It's about going back in time and seeing where we need to reconcile, where we need to make whole. It's really powerful. And on that, Vanessa, I'd be so curious just to find out from you, given how close you are to the subtle, unseen forces, and given how closely your medicine is with the earth, how you understand the reincarnation that the Great Mother is going through, and what is the meaning of these times? What do you understand the meaning of these times to be? And is there anything that you wish to share with those that are listening?
Yeah. Yeah. So even that phrase, right, the reincarnation of Mother Earth, that was something that I received in dream time on a loop the whole night. And I woke up and I felt very moved by it. And actually, this week I received um, a vision as well of the rainbow serpent, which is also in my lineage, and came in dream time and said, a new cycle has begun. And this is not a spirit who comes to me every day. This is a spirit who makes itself known on rare occasions to deliver messages of importance about where we're going as a species. So, what I understand is happening for Mother Earth is that it's important for us to contextualize our time in terms of world cycles. So the world itself has seasons and the world itself has cycles. And we have been in the cycle of spiritual descent, of forgetting, of disorder, of confusion. This is a cycle that we have been in for hundreds of years. But people have become so identified with this cycle that they have misidentified what it means to be a human being. We don't know what it means to be a human being. A lot of the narratives of humanness as a parasitic, invasive species are false. It's an illusion. Are there histories of that abuse and exploitation? Absolutely. But that is not what it means to be a human being. Right? So I even hear a lot of pain when people speak about everything that's happening on the planet, and what follows afterwards is human beings are so terrible. We have to let that go. We have to restudy our role on this planet. And I believe that this is what Mother Earth is asking us to do. With climate catastrophe that is ongoing, the earthquakes, the floods, the fires, they're not going to go away, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. It is. And it's important for those of us who have been doing our spiritual work. some of us may have only started this journey in the last 6 months. Some of us have a longer history of a couple of years. Some of us have ancestors who have been doing this for a very, very long time. But we now need to take everything that we have thus far experienced and put it into action. Through our experiences, we have gained experiential knowledge that will need to be applied in becoming vessels or instruments for this new song of Earth that is now starting to be played. Right. So this is what my ancestors and the guardians of Earth have really been showing me. We have been in a spiritual war for a very long time, and there are anti-life predatory energies on this planet that depend on our spiritual amnesia and our misidentification as the disease itself. Are we experiencing psychosocial disease? Yes, but we are not the disease itself. We have to remember who we were before, and that means walking backwards into the future. So I see this time as the return of the ancient, the ancestral way of being in right relationship with Mother Earth.
Vanessa, the deep emotion that I feel in my body when you speak to us having forgotten what it means to be a human being. This message is just so powerful, because how can we ever rise above the disease if we think we are the disease? Then we become forever trapped.
Exactly.
And there's such a fine line in this time. I'm just so grateful for what you've spoken to, because there's such a fine line in walking into the future present moment with fear, rather than walking into the future present moment with presence and commitment. Because I also believe that for each day that every single one of us are here during this time, we carry medicine for this time. As long as we are here during this time, we carry medicine for this time. And part of our work is to find out what that medicine is and to share it, which is obviously such an integral part of the beauty way, the way of the ancients. Your message is so important and so beautiful and so powerful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that it's you saying that is so pertinent as well, because our essential task, I find, again, because we briefly spoke about the uninitiated and what this means in Western culture, right? And what this has done as well is that it means that for most people, what becomes a priority in their spiritual work is understanding what they're here to do. What am I here to do? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? So I would respond and say this to anybody. You are part of a custodial species. It is a part of your spiritual responsibility to caretake for this planet. That is a part of your purpose. Now you have to start asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? Not what you're here to do. Because there are sentient stories that are breathing through you, that are breathing through your body, that are not who you are, but you've misidentified yourself as those stories. And I think what's so powerful about being on the spiritual path is that we are given the opportunity to die, to practice dying, to rehearse dying, go through little deaths, and those little deaths accompany identities. We shed the bodies of our previous selves. We shed the identities of who we were. And we right now, in order to go through a rebirthing process, we will first have to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So beautiful, because with every death too comes that incarnation of soul, the truth, the true we are. And I believe it was actually in one of our sessions. Yeah, and I believe it is in one of our sessions that one of the pieces of advice that came through to me from, yourself as a channel was this idea of always dedicating anything that we do to the larger whole as such a simple step towards that repair. And I just wanted to share that, because I mean,
Yeah.
for anyone listening, so that they could leave with some practice, because that is what I've always found so valuable about our sessions. As you said, um, the wisdom that comes through, there is always a ritual or something to support the grounding of that information that has come through. But Vanessa, this is really so, so potent, that which you speak to. And it's such a strong message, because it is a message of hope as well, in the truth,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
the over identification with the chaos rather than being present to the process, and understanding our role as caretakers to the process rather than as doers in the process.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? When we know who we are, we'll be doing what we came to do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Vanessa. This has been so valuable. I am thanking you on behalf of everyone that's going to listen to this. This has been truly enriching. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been such an honor to have you here, and also just to experience your medicine, which I highly recommend anyone who is listening and is curious to reach out to Vanessa. Her details are all in the text of this podcast. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Robyn.